Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. This is the Council on Foundations Diversity of Thought Atlas Corps Fellows Program webinar, and we're glad you can join us today. For some housekeeping items, if you need any assistance, access the help desk by selecting Help on the Options toolbar at the top of your GoToWebinar navigation panel. If you need to ask a question of the presenters, click the questions box to type a question for the presenters. If you need to exit the webinar at any time, click the gray X on the upper right corner of the gray webinar navigation bar. And this webinar will be recorded and available to you after the webinar is complete. So if you need to go back and take a look at it, just keep an eye out for the link. And with that, I will turn it over to Floyd Mills, Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the Council on Foundations.
Good afternoon. This is Floyd Mills, and I am excited about today's webinar on the Atlas Corps Fellows Program, particularly because it addresses the diversity of thought that many of us are trying to work through in our organizations. We're pleased today to be joined by Scott Beal, the founder and CEO of Atlas Corps. In addition, we'll hear from Richard Brown, the Vice President of Philanthropy at American Express, as well as Abir Pamuk, the Atlas Corps Fellow working with American Express. Finally, we'll hear from our own Natalie Ross, Vice President of External Relations of the Council, along with our fellow, Maxie Salmon. We're very excited about this afternoon's conversation. I will turn this over to Scott Beal, who will provide us with a bit of an overview of the Atlas Corps program and the Fellows Program in particular. Thanks, Scott.
Great. Thank you, Floyd, very much. Thank you, Council on Foundations, for this opportunity. I want to start off by giving a big picture overview of Atlas Corps, and then get out of the way so you can hear from two of our amazing fellows and the incredible host organizations that they're serving at. And as any good organization should, I do want to begin with the mission and a little bit of the backstory. So Atlas Corps is 12 years old. Previously, I worked with the U.S. Department of State in various countries all around the world. And when I traveled around the world, one thing that I saw was that no matter where I went, I met smart, talented, passionate people who wanted to make the world a better place. The talent in this world is universally distributed, but opportunity is not. You know, as a white male born in the United States, I can go to 160 countries and not even need a visa to travel there. But the idea of somebody from Jamaica or Syria or India or Mexico coming to serve in the United States just really wasn't available. And what I was seeing when I was at the time serving with the embassy in India was that there was so much that we can learn from civil society leaders in India, and also so much that they can learn from us. So I left State Department with this mission to address critical social issues by developing leaders, strengthening organizations, and promoting innovation through an overseas exchange of social sector professionals. So I'll real quickly break that down, just because we really are excited about this, what we call our win-win-win. There's three parts to our mission for those who are taking notes at home. First is develop leaders, the second is to strengthen organizations, and the third is to promote innovation, which basically means having good ideas be spread amongst different leaders and organizations within the United States and actually around the world. And then as a nonprofit, but as a social enterprise, there are three parts that make that work. The first is our fellows come and volunteer for a year. They serve at organizations like American Express and Council on Foundations on really very limited stipend, a lot like AmeriCorps or Peace Corps, and gain the most of this opportunity and go through a training program that we provide to them. Second, the host organizations pay a cost share that covers the vast majority of the expenses, and that allows them to come and serve on their team, typically for a 12 to 18-month fellowship. And then the third part, of course, is that we raise the rest of the money. We are, in fact, a nonprofit, and we do raise our money from philanthropy as well. And so let me kind of break down for you how the program actually works. We bring leaders from around the world to serve in the United States, typically young professionals between the ages of 22 to 35. And, you know, when I was first describing India to a friend of mine in India, I described it as a reverse Peace Corps. He said, I like your idea, but why are you against peace? Thank you, Natalie, for the, sometimes with a webinar you don't get laughter, so that's nice. And so we're not anti-peace, that's definitely not part of our mission, but it is reversing this flow of leaders, from Americans serving overseas to people serving here. But unlike the Peace Corps that might range from 22 to 82, most of our fellows tend to be 30-year-old social change leaders who do full-time placement at nonprofits, foundations, private sector organizations, academics. Even the U.S. Peace Corps has actually hosted Atlas Corps Fellows. And then simultaneously, they go through a training program with us. We pull them out of their placement for about 3 or 4 weeks of the year, and then also do ongoing training with them as well. And then through that experience, the organization strengthens, the leader gains skills. Ultimately, they go back home, and we see the social impact through our work. And so we have placed, as I said, fellows at incredible for-profit partners, one of the focus of this webinar, including American Express, which is not on that slide. Sorry, American Express, one of our longtime partners, and nonprofits. While you may have never heard of Atlas Corps, you certainly know Ashoka and UNICEF and Mercy Corps and Habitat for Humanity, and smaller community-based organizations like homeless shelters in DC. We place the conservative groups and progressive groups, even religious groups and secular, international and domestic. We believe that there are leaders overseas who can learn from these great organizations, and these organizations can be strengthened by the capacity of our leaders as well. A couple quick key numbers is we've now done this for 12 years. We've had 28 classes, so basic math, we do more than one class a year. In fact, this year we'll bring 6 classes of fellows to Atlas Corps. Every 2 months we have a new group coming. We've had over 600 leaders now from 88 countries. We're still a small to medium-sized nonprofit with a $5 million budget. Last year we had 15,000 people, that is not a typo, we had 15,000 people apply for our program with about 100 placements in the US, and we placed over 50 overseas. We have programs in Colombia and Malaysia, which we're not really speaking about a lot today. So hyper competitive. This is not an intern program. These are incredibly talented young professionals who typically are about 30 years old, and 2/3 have master's degrees. So as I said, this is one of our pictures of our fellows from a recent class. It's nice to see some of their faces there. And then we've gotten some great recognition from the Nonprofit Times, which has been really appreciated. You know, our vision is a world where good ideas and talented people cross borders to work together on critical social issues. The best social change leaders from around the world, learning from each other, sharing their knowledge and expertise, and also serving and advancing the mission of organizations here in the United States. This is an opportunity for organizations to learn from amazing leaders, and also for professionals to learn from these amazing organizations. That together by, in a long-term professional placement, you know, these fellows, they hit the ground running, but a few months in, they're really making an incredible impact from the diversity of thought and experiences, the new ideas and talent and energy they bring to organizations. And our fellows benefit tremendously from the incredible host organizations we've partnered with as well. We are powering diverse voices. Our theme for this year is empowering global women. We do allow some men into our program, but it is a majority women. And we also have 40% of our program is Muslim, for example. We have leaders from all over the world, like this leader, Shamila from Pakistan. We are strengthening leaders who are changing the world. These two fellows, briefly, in this picture, were two fellows who brought down the Egyptian government in Tahrir Square, and 2 months later were volunteering in the United States, a Coptic Christian and a Muslim woman who pretty much kicked ass. And then, you know, we are changing the world through this life-changing experience that, frankly, so many Americans have had, be it Peace Corps or in serving overseas or studying abroad. Now we're giving an opportunity for the world's best leaders to have that experience and to learn and to grow during the fellowship. So rather than have me talk about it anymore, I want to pass it over to our hosts, 2 of our host organizations, and especially to 2 of our incredible fellows, and just end again with appreciation for our partners and an invitation that we hope to be able to partner with many, many more of you in the year ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. What we're going to do is we're going to hear from 2 of our speakers on the call today. We're going to hear from American Express and from the Council. Before we get into the conversations from either group, we're going to show a quick video that is about a minute long. It gets to get us more on that video, tell us more sort of how that fits in with the work that is being done by ABER, and tell us more about your experience with the Fellows Program.
The statues were put in place in 1941, and this is the first time since they were installed that they were ever removed. They've been cleaned and been reinstalled. They had actually over time weather and turned different colors, and we felt like it was a great moment to celebrate not only their contributions to the city, but also to celebrate our facade. The building has been fully renovated, and the final leg of it was to celebrate these beautiful statues on the outside. New Yorkers love to celebrate their history and themselves, and so many of us value that a character like Alexander Hamilton is really being celebrated right now with the production on Broadway. And it's exciting to see something that has been part of our building for so long be treated so respectfully, and for people to appreciate that he's returned to his former glory.
Okay, well, thank you. This is Richard Brown. I'm with American Express, a VP for philanthropy here. And just as a way of context for that particular video, and so we have a pretty robust leadership, historic preservation, and community service grant making program, but we were looking for ways to promote those efforts in a more significant way using social media. And our Atlas Corps fellow, Abir, came to us with really a phenomenal idea to do progressive storytelling. And this is something that she had done in a previous position when she was at her previous job, the job she was in before she actually came to the United States and came to American Express. But the idea here was to create a media campaign, and this really was the last piece of it that you just saw, but it was a media campaign to promote a particular grant that we made. In this particular case, it was to the Museum for the City of New York, to highlight the restoration of these two phenomenal statues that have been sitting outside of the museum for many years. And so it was her idea to really start this project, and for her to she was the producer of it. She's the one who worked with the museum to make it happen. We provided a grant to the museum to do the restoration, but she was very much involved in the whole production of the pre-video when they were being removed, video of the restoration down in Maryland, as well as when they were brought back and, as you saw, put back on their pedestals. And so this is just an example of the work that Abir brought to us. We did not know anything about this idea of progressive storytelling before she came to us, and we've been using it now on a couple of different projects, this one being the most prominent thus far. So it's just an example of what these Atlas Corps Fellows can do. American Express has really been blessed to have 5 Atlas Corps Fellows to date. We have been involved in the program since 2014. We've had a fellow from India, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Syria, where Abir is from, and now another current Atlas Corps Fellow is from Algeria. And they really all bring a significant amount of value to the position. They bring an amazing amount of value to our organization, because we have an opportunity to work with people from completely different backgrounds. And so for us, the win for American Express is really, as this webinar is titled, Diversity of Thought and Experience. I mean, these are individuals who are coming from vastly different experiences from where they're living. They have a completely different educational system in terms of how they were raised, and they bring all of this to bear, and they support the work that we're doing, but at the same time, they influence and they provide us with context for a different way of thought for our employees. Another wonderful value and win that our folks have brought to us, our Atlas Corps Fellows have brought, is that we had experienced a downsizing of our department, our CSR department. We had started with 14 people when I was here, started here 10 years ago. We're now down to 10 people who are full-time staff. And so having these folks who are these experienced professionals, practitioners involved in our work expands our CSR bandwidth considerably, given that we aren't able to add headcount, but we are able to provide these fellowships. The other opportunity that they provide is that we have the opportunity to help develop, and our hope is that we are having the hope to develop the countries where these folks, when they go back, they bring back with them additional experiences, different skills, and actually will enhance the communities that they come back to. So it's a really a win-win for all those involved. And we've just had a tremendous experience working with these 5 individuals, and all of them have gone through our Leadership Academy. So they're all alumni of our Academy program, which provides them with additional reasons to keep in touch with us. And so it's been a great experience. We're planning to continue our relationship with Atlas Corps. And I'll now turn it over to Abir, who is one of our 2 current Atlas Corps fellows who works in Brooklyn, and who is really working very hard to support the work that we're doing at American Express. Abir?
Yes, thank you very much, Richard, for this incredible introduction to what Atlas Corps Fellows do. I am absolutely a lucky person to have had the chance to be on this fellowship program, and I'm happy today to share with other people what is this experience like from the fellow perspective. First of all, just coming from the countries that we come from, and looking at the backgrounds of some of the countries that the fellows come from, really leadership development is at the bottom of anybody's priority. Nobody gives priority to young people who want to go cross borders or learn new things or have new experiences. So Atlas Corps really provides a chance for you to get out from the pressure you have around, especially in a country like the one I come from, which is Syria, and just have a chance to breathe and get training to know how to better deal with the things that are happening in your home country or the social problems that you're trying to face. So during the time that since I came to the United States 1 year ago, I have been working with the American Express on the 3 social corporate responsibility areas that they have, which are leadership, historical preservation, and community service. I wanted to dig a little more on the historical preservation project, which is the Hamilton Clinton Alexander Hamilton and DeWitt Clinton Restoration Project. That was a completely new area for me. For example, as a person, I worked previously in communications for a children's organization, so historical preservation was something totally new. This is a thing that I learned through American Express. Working on this project gave me the opportunity to really dive into the details of the implementation of the project. So before I come with a background of a communications like high-level strategist, like kind of the big picture strategy, with these projects, I really got the chance to learn a lot more technical things. I definitely had to work with a different mentality being in the United States. I learned a lot of things about how people deal with social issues in the United States through the American Express, whether working on this project or attending the American Express Leadership Academy. The Leadership Academy is a training that you get for a week. It's an intensive training where you evaluate yourself and ask people in your workspace to evaluate you, and then go to this 5 days training and look at how you evaluated yourself versus how people evaluated you, which was really shocking to a lot of the people that I was with. So being in this fellowship has definitely, if I'm going to sum up, it taught me a lot of technical skills that I didn't know before. I had the chance to run a lot of, for example, chats that happened on Twitter, which was something that I haven't done before. And they were pretty successful. I also had the chance to go to the academy. The network, I can't stress how important that was for me. There was no way I would have ever got introduced to all these people that I was introduced to in the United States, especially coming from the Middle East region where you don't have access to people, you don't have access to communities. You feel like you're pretty alone working on these, on different social issues, but coming into the United States, you can definitely find a lot of groups that work on different types of issues, no matter what the issue you care about is. It was really, I call it in a positive way, an explosion of network that I had in my life. It's been phenomenal. The year has brought me network, technical skills, training. It's been one of the most valuable years in my life. I consider myself to have grown 10 years in 1 year. So both professionally and personally, of course. So thank you very much to Atlas Corps, to American Express for being such an incredible host who exposed me to all these opportunities and who provided me with all these people that I'm now surrounded with as well, called Atlas Corps Fellows. I can't be more proud and thankful to have this chance.
Thank you, Richard.
Hello?
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. No, we thank you for the experience there. Appreciate that. What we'll do is we'll now move to the council experience, and I'm going to ask Natalie and Maxie to share on their experience with the program.
Great, thank you, Floyd. My name is Natalie Ross. I'm the Vice President for External Relations here at the Council, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about what caused us as an organization to reach out to Atlas Corps and bring Maxie on board as our first ever Atlas Corps Fellow, first of many. And then I'll just let her talk about her experience. So for us, you know, Atlas Corps was suggested to us by one of our members who has long invested in the institution. When we were talking about some real gaps in capacity that we had on our staff, both because of number of staff, similar to what Richard was saying, and that we had a lot of work to do and not enough hands on deck. So we're thinking about starting a fellowship program. And a member rightfully pointed out, why do you want to start a fellowship program when you can just partner with someone like Atlas Corps who knows how to do this really well? And that also addressed another issue that we have. I run our international program, and as an organization, we do not have the capability to sponsor visas, and so it can be a challenge to get non-U.S. voices within our staff because many would not have work authorization. And so that's something, as we run an international program that works with foundations making grants all over the world, obviously having international perspective and voice on our team is something I think is really critical. And so Atlas Corps was a perfect partner, both to help strengthen our capacity, to help us invest in building a fellowship program and fellowship fellows as individuals within our organization, but to also provide us with international voices within our staff. And throughout the process of getting our first fellow, I was really impressed with the quality of fellows that we interviewed. Maxie, who has now been with us, we extended her fellowship. She was here with us almost a year and a half, has been an immense addition to our team. We're all very emotional because it's her last week at the council. And we've all gotten very close. But one thing I would say is I was personally very surprised as a philanthropic institution looking for someone with expertise in philanthropy, how many candidates did have grant-making experience as social leaders in their countries. You know, Maxie could talk a little bit about her background, but she's been a social change leader in Jamaica and has had experience with philanthropy, which was incredibly valuable to bring in as a perspective. So it was important that we had this additional set of hands. Over the last year and a half, she's truly become my right-hand woman and is a huge set of shoes to fill. Our new Atlas Corps Fellow will arrive later in March, and we'll keep moving forward in our partnership, alongside helping to launch new activities for our program that we truly couldn't have done without another set of hands. She's also really supported us across the organization, from being an author to a meeting planner, a project manager to a web content designer. As a small organization with less than 50 staff, you know, her hands have been everywhere. And that would really be my advice for other host organizations, to really think about the breadth of value that a fellow can have and to give
give them the opportunity to do many different things, because I think Maxie, she was helpful from day one, but I've very much seen her grow within her role as she's been here, and she'll talk a little bit about some of the things she's done, but that very much culminated in a conference that we hosted last month in Mexico, bringing together foundation leaders from 3 countries, where she had her hands in every element of that first ever international conference for us. And so it was just so wonderful to see her kind of be able to chart her fellowship journey to end with such a culminating experience in Mexico. And with that, Maxie, I hope you can tell us even more about working at the council.
All right, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to start by saying how much of a commitment it is for a fellow to decide, to take up a placement here in the U.S. Many fellows are leaving behind their jobs, giving up their jobs, leaving their children, wives, husbands, other family members, and friends. And so they are, or we are, I should say, really committed to this process. And what that means is you're getting team members who are therefore very passionate about what they're doing and can be of great value, really invested in the process. I found that the council was a perfect fit for me because the work was well aligned with my interests in philanthropy, research, the Sustainable Development Goals, and event coordination. Since being at the council, I've had the opportunity to contribute meaningfully to the council's programs and activities. When I got here last January, the council was already, in full gear planning for its annual conference. And I think that was one of my first major events joining the team, and I was so happy that I was able to integrate well into that process and to help Natalie to pull off a fantastic global program at that event. Since then, like she mentioned, we've recently completed the North American Community Foundation Summit, which was held in Mexico City, and I think, as Natalie rightly mentioned, I think that was one of the main highlights of my fellowship for several reasons. Having been a part of the process, for months, and then seeing it all come together successfully. But also added to that is the work we also did on launching a new SDGs report, which was released alongside the summit. And so that kind of that experience brought together so many of my passions and interests, which, really made this whole experience that much more exciting. I found that this was an opportunity to strengthen my knowledge and engagement with the Sustainable Development Goals. That's something I was really, truly interested in coming here. And actually, it was one of the main things that attracted me to the council, having served as an advocate for a number of years, and particularly working within the UN, the UN system as a civil society representative, and being, involved with that transition from the MDGs to the SDGs. And so when I recognized that the council was leading the way as it relates to philanthropy's engagement with the Sustainable Development Goals, I thought that was a perfect opportunity to continue working in this area. I completely agree with Abir when she said, when she spoke about the value of the network that the fellowship offers. I was definitely able to build my network and also work collaboratively with philanthropic professionals from other countries. The summit, for instance, we were working very closely with partners from Mexico and Canada. And I think just that cultural experience in itself is so invaluable. And I perhaps would not have gotten it had I, not been here. I wanted to also highlight the opportunity that this fellowship provided in terms of me gaining new skills and new knowledge. I think one of the strongest things of this placement is that it has equipped me with the knowledge necessary to go back home and work alongside other philanthropic partners in Jamaica to build the philanthropic infrastructure there. Natalie alluded to the fact that I have some philanthropic experience. I, along with one of my friends, started a foundation back in 2010 in Jamaica. And I have learned so much having spent the year here, learning about America's philanthropic infrastructure and just how much more developed it is than what we have back home. And, one of the best things too coming out of this is I've been able to connect, having been here in the U.S., with another philanthropic leader in Jamaica, who I'm now looking forward to going back home with to work on strengthening our sector. So it took me coming here to make that connection, which, I mean, in itself is truly incredible. I was also happy to have had the experience to serve as a cultural ambassador and to be able to share knowledge about my country and my culture with others, and to create what I believe are lasting bonds of friendship here at the council and with others who I've met along the way. More generally, I think the structure of the Atlas Corps program provides me with opportunities for development outside of the council. One of the things I was truly appreciative of was that I had the council support to participate in external events and conferences. I was able to attend the Nexus Summit. The council sponsored my participation in the Interaction Forum. I attended the Global Leadership Forum and DevEx Career Forum. So there were all these opportunities that, alongside coming to the council each day, helped in my professional and personal development. Training opportunities, Scott mentioned the Global Leadership Lab trainings, and we also had the Georgetown certification, which I found quite valuable. One of the key highlights for me of this fellowship was the opportunity I had really to bond with other amazing fellows. My class, we started out with 23 of us, I think at least from 18 different countries. And I think when you have so much diversity and passion gathered in one room, it's simply amazing. There's so much that you can learn. I now feel like if I'm anywhere, almost anywhere in the world, I can no longer be stranded. It's just one of those things that you have a family member, so to speak, or a friend anywhere. And that's a truly amazing experience. It was also the perfect opportunity for me to learn more about the U.S., its history and its culture. One of the other things that I enjoyed was the museum visits, the White House tours. I never thought I'd have gone ice skating in my life, and that was something I did the first week of being here. I also had the opportunity to watch my first ever live basketball game with the council. And I mean, these are things that sometimes it depends on where you're from. I mean, I'm from an island. The snow and the cold and the winter here, not my favorite thing. But there are also, I mean, I never thought I would have gone ice skating. I'm a Jamaican. It's not something we, really think about each day. And I was very hesitant to do it, but it was truly an enjoyable experience. And I think overall, this year has been unforgettable. And I do agree with Abir that I have grown immensely from it, and I have no regrets having quit my job at the end of 2016 to do this.
And I should say that you're leaving us. This is Natalie. Maxie is leaving us and taking this experience and turning it into a wonderful job opportunity back in Jamaica within the UN system, looking at the SDGs. And so this year has been a great way for us to build a connection with someone who's going to go back and lead on this work in her country, and where we'll forever have a contact. As she said, we do have members in Jamaica as part of our network, and so it's been helpful kind of with her here and all the wonderful things she's done, but it will be an amazing connection that we'll continue to have and that will be beneficial on both sides.
Thank you both. And I can say that as a member of the council, I know that Nancy will be sorely missed after her last days here. So thank you for your time today and for your time with us here at the council as well. With that, what we'll do is we're going to turn to questions, and I'm going to remind everyone that they can submit questions to us by clicking the question box on their screen. We have a few questions here, which I'm going to put forth to our panelists. And we'll start with the question I think that's more for Scott, and it is, what types of organizations can host an Atlas Corps Fellow?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question, and hats off to our fellows and hosts who just presented. That was awesome to hear. I mean, the short answer is any type of organization that's advancing a social mission can host an Atlas Corps Fellow. As I said before, we have nonprofit and for-profit. We have foundations and we have government. We place at the mayor's office in DC and San Francisco, and with the federal government, with the Peace Corps, which was a hard placement, but we can do that too. People think of us in the terms of large international nonprofits like, Oxfam Care, Save the Children, Habitat for Humanity. But I think many of our best placements are the homeless shelter in DC, like Miriam's Kitchen, or Latin American Youth Center, which had an incredible fellow from Mexico last year, And, whether it's a conservative group like the Cato Institute, which had a free market economist from Bolivia, or the Human Rights Campaign, which has probably had 7 or 8 fellows. We place in religious organizations like World Vision's been an incredible partner of ours, as well as there's an Islamic Academy, which has had a number one of our fellows. And so we want a diverse set of host organizations, frankly, because we have a diverse set of candidates. There's a for-profit company in Northern Virginia called Affinis Labs, which is doing social tech, tech for good, basically. And we have a coder from Zimbabwe who made an app so that people can donate during Ramadan in a halal way, which is kind of amazing. Like, I don't know how Python works, but he's made these really cool apps to do that, and we can place those types of folks. I would say where the restriction comes in is that, this isn't a low-cost way to bring in a receptionist into your company or into your nonprofit. We are looking for meaningful roles for leaders who have meaningful experience. It doesn't mean that everyone in the nonprofit sector doesn't do some administrative work. Our fellows aren't above that. But we're looking for detailed, tangible job descriptions which advance social good. And it could be Airbnb's communications office, where we now have a Libyan fellow who's doing really amazing work. It doesn't have to be in the American Express Foundation or in this organization that ends in .org. But it needs to be in a position that can leverage their skills and experience and advance larger social good for the world and for the organization.
Excellent. This question is probably more for the host organizations. The question reads, how have Amex and the council leveraged the experience of the fellows? More importantly, how has their diversity of thought contributed to the organization?
So we at Amex, we are a little bit different than I think most sites. I have to be candid about this. Is that our own governing at American Express in terms of folks who are allowed credentials to come into the building every single day wouldn't allow us to have the Atlas Corps fellows actually come into the building each and every day, although they do visit. So they are actually placed at 2 different organizations. One of them is placed at Atlas Corps in DC, and the other is placed at a really significant partner of ours, and that's Spark Action in Brooklyn. And so they work out of those offices. And so they have not had, I can't say that they've had a significant impact on the culture of American Express, although I would say that they've had an impact on the CSR department, the folks who work in CSR who are my colleagues. And so they participate in meetings, they participate on conference calls. They are, as mentioned before, Abir has been very active in putting together the progressive storytelling. And so they've had impact in terms of influencing our folks in terms of what individuals from other countries can accomplish if given the opportunity. And so I think that's been the impact, is that we've been able to see the real value that these folks can bring to our department by both providing us with new ideas as well as freeing up time for us to do other things, because they're taking on some of the tasks that we would have had to take on. And so our fellows are doing very important things for us. They're doing things that we would have had to do with our own staffing if they weren't with us. And so they really have an opportunity to provide us with bandwidth so that we can take on other responsibilities, but also they've demonstrated that they actually are quite talented practitioners who have the ability to add value to the company by helping us generate positive recognition as per the progressive storytelling. Or the other Atlas Corps fellow is very much involved in our alumni network, which is now 1,900 strong, and they've helped us to grow that. And the value of that is a very important metrics for us. And so those are the ways I would say, in a nutshell, how our fellows have added value to American Express.
Great.
Thank you, Richard. Excellent.
Yeah, this is Natalie at the council. So I really think of Maxi adding immense value to the council in 2 real ways. So I think in the first, Floyd is our Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and so it's clear that the council has a real commitment to diversity, and that's something that we have staffed in the VP role and have done over the past few years. But as looking at our work from a global perspective, which is what I do, leading the international programs, I feel like we aren't walking the talk of diversity if we only have Americans on our
And so since I remember the first time I met Floyd, I said, Floyd, you have to think about diversity of global voices, and how can we get global voices on our team? How can we have those perspectives in the conversations that we have as an organization? Because I just think as an internationally facing and an international program, if we're truly only being run by Americans, I think we cannot be as strong as we need to be because we are inherently not thinking of things that we should because of our personal bias as Americans, even if we're Americans who've lived abroad and worked internationally in our whole career. So for me, the relationship with Atlas Corps is an opportunity to walk the talk of our discussions around diversity and to also expand what we mean by a definition of diversity. So obviously Maxie as a Jamaican brings a geographic diversity, but she also brings an important racial diversity as a young woman of color who's not afraid to speak her mind and to really be present in this organization far beyond someone who might think, you know, she's not an intern, she's not a receptionist. She is very as critical to this organization as any other full-time staff, and I think that's been incredibly important. And then I would say on the programmatic side, another impact that she's had is, again, how do you leverage the expertise and perspective that she brings as a Jamaican, but also from her past experience in Jamaica. So Maxie worked in the Foreign Service of the Jamaican government and brought that expertise here. This year, we were looking to launch a new program that explores how our federal government agencies that have formal partnership offices can better leverage philanthropy, and it's called the Global Liaisons Program. And so from her arrival and given her expertise, that is something that Maxie has led. She's led the first selecting which government agencies that might be, doing outreach to them to secure their participation, developing agendas and getting them in the room, and really helping have those conversations of what it means to partner with philanthropy in the private sector as government federal agencies. And her expertise having been in the Jamaican government was critical to that and something that really added to our team. I've worked my entire career in the nonprofit philanthropy sector, and so I've never been in the government itself. And so that was another addition to the team that was incredibly important, and a perspective that we wouldn't have had without her presence with us. And so in both of those ways, I think we've benefited far beyond just kind of the tasks that Maxie did while she was with us.
Thank you very much. The next question is more, I think, again, for Scott, perhaps. It's to what extent is language an issue, given that we are hiring from a variety of nations where a foreign language is being spoken? Is there a qualification around language when folks are working here in the U.S.?
No, it's a great question. I'm glad you asked it because I think sometimes people hesitate to ask it. You know, partially is the nature of the fact that we had 15,000 people apply for 100 positions in the U.S., our fellows tend to be exceptionally fluent in English. It is a requirement of the program that when they apply, they be proficient in English, but I think there are very few fellows who you would meet who you wouldn't describe as fluent. Now, that being said, if you're going to have a fellow who's doing public speaking, you might want to look for examples of public speaking. Just like if they're going to be doing, advanced Excel spreadsheets or Salesforce, you might want to look for examples of that. So, in the Atlas Corps process, we are checking the references, we are testing their background, but if there's specific skills or issues that you want them to be doing, we encourage host organizations to do an extra round of testing during the application process. But English and language does not tend to be one of the problems. We have a fellow right now from Mexico who's serving at Goodwill Industries, and I think he speaks 5 languages fluently. And I don't know how he speaks German fluently. I assume he must have studied there or something, but it's not going to be a challenge of English. In fact, it's going to be an unexpected benefit of other languages as well.
Very good. That sort of translates to the next question. That next question had more to do with, I think, the particular roles into which the fellows are being hired. The question is, can fellows be hired into a specific role at an organization, or do fellows have a more common skill set that fits within a range of particular jobs?
Yeah, I mean, the two biggest things here is that you can't bring on a fellow to replace an American worker, which, again, I don't think most organizations would do, but it just needs to be said. Fellows are typically filling new roles within organizations that they're desperately trying to address and haven't had the bandwidth or capacity or perhaps talent to be able to address. So typically we're looking at new roles or a combination of different roles for fellows to be a part of. Again, they tend to be professional roles, maybe mid-career, but really from that, it really is, it's the bandwidth. I mean, we had a doctor from Sudan serve at Susan G. Komen for the Cure. We've had a Mexico from India serve at Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services. So we've had folks with quite advanced degrees come and serve on teams. That being said, I think there are a lot of folks in the communications background, a lot of people who do monitoring evaluation. We had a fellow from India who served at Global Giving doing grants management. What's most helpful for us is a very specific job description. And then from our pool of finalist candidates, we'll send organizations 4 or 5 candidates to interview, and then they'll select who they want, who's going to best fit the needs of the role that they have.
Great, thank you. All right, one other question, and this one reads, when do you need to apply to host a fellow at the hosting organization, and how do I select the fellow?
Great question. So every 2 months, we're bringing in a new group of fellows. So for example, right now, there's 3 people on my team who are working with current and prospective host organizations. I'm pretty sure the deadline is March 19th for a fellow to start in May. And so it can take us a good 6 weeks or 8 weeks to do the visa. So we can't turn around on it on the dime. But we are constantly recruiting candidates and constantly replacing. And we have a pool of truly 600, what we call semi-finalists. These are 9s and 10s on their interviews who we would place if we had organizations ready to bring them on. So an organization would contact us, Scott at atlascore.org, Brittany at atlascore.org. We will follow up with everyone after this call and say, this is what I'm looking for, and then we'd give a position description, which they would fill in, and then we would send 4 or 5 candidates. The host organization might look at that and say, I love these 2 candidates. Do you have anyone else who feels like these 2 people? And while you're looking, let's get interviews set up with these 2 candidates. And then the host organization would interview, and if for whatever reason it's not a great fit, or maybe the funding's not there, there's no contract or commitment or deposit that needs to be made. But the overwhelming majority of the time when an organization interviews a candidate, we make a placement. And if March 19th is too soon, if it's pretty soon from now, come mid-May is our deadline for the July placement. So we're never that far away from a new class of fellows starting, and every 2 months we're bringing in almost 20 new fellows.
Excellent, thank you. Sorry. We've got another question. I want to know whether there is a specific quota for a particular country.
That's a great question. So in a sense, no, there's absolutely no quotas. I mean, we have fellows from Canada and England and Russia, in addition to Yemen and Syria and, the Philippines, South Africa. Like, we really do bring fellows from all over the world. People think of us as like a developing, quote unquote, developing. It's not even a phrase I like. I prefer Global South, but we really are bringing the best leaders from anywhere in the world. Our fellows tend to be from Africa, South Asia. We have a lot of fellows from Latin America. We also have fellows from Europe and East Asia. We will occasionally have grants, for example, from the U.S. Embassy in Pakistan to bring a group of Pakistani fellows. So in an announcement of new classes, there may be more fellows from one country than another. But at the same time, Pakistan's a huge country. So we also get a lot of candidates from that country. So we have no quotas. We're trying to find the best leaders, going to the best organizations, and perhaps most importantly, the best matches between those organizations and candidates. And if I had 100 organizations after this call want candidates from 100 different countries, we can make that happen. We're not even really limited within State Department. I mean, there are limits, but we know how to navigate them. It's really more about, for us, we're not trying to hit somebody's special number in a year or a special number from a country. We're trying to give as much opportunity to as many incredible leaders to strengthen as many organizations as we can. So you'll see it's pretty diverse, and it will go up and down from different countries.
And I can add something on the council's experience. This is Natalie, of bringing on, because this is our second fellow who'll be starting next month. And I would say it was really the quality of candidates was high for both interview processes. And we did interviews with several candidates. I think for each time we asked for a few more options because that's what we wanted. And so I think we did 6 interviews for each time. And for us, it was important to actually give our potential fellows an exercise to do to really show us how they would perform on the job and highlight their skill set, which is something that really set Maxie apart, was her ability to write a draft blog for us, because writing is such an important element of the role. And that's something where I feel like the Atlas Core program was really easy to work with, because that's something we do for all the placements on my team, to kind of work with our hiring system, and that helped us bring in someone who we felt really confident could be very capable to get started from day one, and to ensure that they were really treated like any other member of our team. And we had a great experience, considering candidates from all parts of the world. Both times, I think we had candidates from Latin America, Africa, Asia, and our next fellow is actually going to be from Canada. And so it was a wonderful experience and very diverse.
Are there any more questions before we move to wrap up?
I forgot one more part of the process while we see if any more questions come in, and then we can wrap. It is done by a cost share. I can't remember if I mentioned this before, so I don't want to leave it out. Host organizations do pay a fee that covers part of those expenses. And so it is a way to, so it's not free, but it is a way at a reasonable price point to bring on a really talented leader to their team. We really try to emphasize like the incredible skill and match of our candidates for the host organizations, but I don't want people to leave the call thinking that it's free. It's actually, it's done in partnership with the host organization, and as actually I said this, I think it's one of the early slides, and also funders that we bring to the table.
I think that's it for the questions in terms of questions from the participants. No, there is one more question. Let me get that one in quickly. Does the Atlas Core team assist in getting their visa processed, or with the visa process? I think is the question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is our magic sauce, if you will. Like, we make it easy for the candidate and the host organization. After the job description and we send candidates, you make a pick. We are doing all of the back end, from sponsoring the visa to doing the health insurance to buying the plane tickets, providing the living stipend, to providing support for the fellow when they arrive, to trying to make sure during the course of the year that it's a success. When problems arise, which doesn't happen all the time, but certainly happens some of the time, we work with the host organization and the fellow to work through those problems. It's a term-limited visa. It can be up to 18 months, and then the fellows have to go home. Easily the biggest complaint of our program is the host organizations want to keep their fellow forever.
Agreed. We didn't want to lose her.
And in fact, host organizations have at times hired their fellows overseas, which we're totally cool with. Points of Light had a fellow who'd extended for 18 months, hired that fellow in Brazil. That fellow then went to Europe, and 5 years later, that fellow came back on H-1B. Totally cool. We're good with that. We want the fellow to go back home at least for a year before returning to the United States. So we take care of all those back-end logistics that really, at the end of the day, prevent most people from even considering programs like this, especially smaller and medium-sized nonprofits. But even the big ones like Habitat, and like they tend to prefer to work with us because we make it so easy. And as we brought 4 fellows last year from Muslim banned countries, including Syria, Libya, Sudan, and Somalia. So we're able, the Palestinian territory is not on the Muslim ban list, but like a hard country to get visas from. And so we are able to navigate very difficult waters from our 12 years of experience on this.
Okay, one other question. You mentioned SNAP benefits as part of that conversation. The question reads, does the fellow receive the benefits package of the host organization? Or I think this question is, how is the insurance handled for the fellows coming over?
Yeah, so the health insurance and the taxes are all done via Atlas Core, and they are trainees of Atlas Core, but part of their training program is done at the host. So it is a health insurance designed like the Fulbright program or the Humphrey Fellowship for international trainees. So it's not going to be the same health insurance as a host organization, but typically if a host organization has X vacation policy or recognizes X vacation days, a fellow will typically be treated in the same way as a staff member would. But it is a training program. Our fellows are serving at organizations. We say serving instead of working because it really is a volunteer experience. And so the fellows know that, and host organizations should know too. I mean, as Maxie said in her first comments, they're not just giving up opportunities and families back at home, they're investing in this year, which makes them even more mission-driven than your average nonprofit workers, tends to be pretty mission-driven. And so that's why we talk about the give, win, win, win. Everyone at the table is giving to this experience, and the idea is, and what we have found is they're all benefiting much more than they put into it.
I think that is, in fact, the last of our questions. Just looking to make sure that's the case. Yep, we are out of questions. So with that, I want to thank the participants, Scott, Richard, Abir, Natalie, Matthew. Thank you all for your time today. Much appreciated. Following the webinar, what we'll do is we will set out an email. It will include some information on the Atlas Core Fellows Program, so everyone will receive that in an email from the council. In addition, there will be a recording of today's webinar made available to all. So we'll get those links and the email attachments out to the group in short order. If there are questions about the program, we will probably direct you to Scott, and Scott's name on the email address will be included in the follow-on information. If there are questions for the council, of course, we're here as well. So we thank everyone for their time today, and we appreciate your participation. We will look forward to speaking to you all again very soon. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.